Now, to be honest, I'm not 100% convinced that yellow tea should be a completely unique and separate category of tea. And here's why. So what is yellow tea? Well, yellow tea was said to be an ancient style of tea with its origins in the mid-Tang dynasty over 1,000 years ago. It was considered to be a tribute level tea. That is, it was tea that farmers and producers would present to the emperor as a tribute and as examples of the best and most skillfully produced tea that they could offer. These teas, though, I think were more likely referencing the tree type as opposed to the tea type. That is, they were likely to be green teas that were made from buds and leaves that had a natural kind of yellow hue to it. Hence, they described it as being yellow teas. Yellow tea as a separate category of tea, though, came about as a result of mistakes made during the production of green tea. So production of yellow tea is said to date back to the mid-1500s, so during the Ming dynasty. So while drying green tea leaves, some producers during the fixing or kill green stage of production supposedly either shortened the time that was needed or they didn't apply enough heat to completely stop the oxidation of the leaves, which is a crucial step to the production of green tea. So this resulted in a small amount of dampness being left in the leaves, which caused them to sort of steam a little and turn yellow over time. And once dried, resulted in a tea that apparently was a little bit different from green tea, and it was quite smooth, mellow, and not as strong as like a typical green tea. So not as strong and green in flavor as a traditional green tea. And so from this mistake, the additional menhuang or piling stage or wrapping stage was added to the production process, and thus yellow tea as a tea category was born. So to give you an idea, the making of green tea typically involves the following steps: picking the leaves, then after picking you've got withering, then you've got fixing, otherwise known as kill green or killing the green, then you've got shaping, and then drying. Now with yellow tea, that menhuang or piling or wrapping stage has been added in between the fixing and shaping stages. So depending on the tea and region, the leaves are either wrapped in cloth or thick paper, or they're piled into bamboo baskets. And due to the heat that's been applied to the leaves during the previous fixing stage, a light steaming of the leaves occurs as a result. And so essentially, the leaves undergo both a dry heat and also a kind of steaming as well. Different yellow teas require different times for piling or wrapping, going from as little as half an hour all the way up to several days. Now, to be honest, I'm not 100% convinced that yellow tea should be a completely unique and separate category of tea. And here's why. But before I jump into this, if you're enjoying the video so far, please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. It really helps us out, and I will be forever grateful for your support. Thank you. With the other tea categories, so we're talking about white tea, green tea, oolong, black, dark or fermented styles of tea, like there's a definitive step that during the tea's production process, like it fundamentally changes the chemical makeup of the leaves and significantly affects the flavor profile, and thereby defining that category of tea. So yellow tea, despite this additional sort of this kind of piling step, this wrapping step, the menhuang step, I don't think it really has this. And so here's what I mean. Let's start with green tea first. So as this is pretty much the tea that started it all. With green tea, you can say that the defining step is the fixing or the killing the green step, which is where, as I mentioned before, after withering the leaves, heat is applied to stop the oxidation of the leaves. So it's a dry heat if it's Chinese green tea, and steamed if it's Japanese green tea. So this step keeps the leaves green, stops the oxidation, and makes green tea, well, green. White tea doesn't have this step, and I guess you can define white tea by the absence of the kill green step, resulting in a lighter style of tea that slowly oxidizes or ages over time. So oolong teas are partially oxidized teas that really can be defined by the shaking step that occurs after the withering but before the kill green step during production. So this is a light bruising that partially oxidizes the leaves, where depending on the producer and the desired result, after a certain point when they feel that the leaves have oxidized enough, they apply heat to stop the oxidation of the leaves. And so the bruising and the resultant partial oxidation of the leaves are said to sort of transform the catechins within the leaves from one type to another, and as a result, in terms of flavor profile, the teas, generally speaking, go from, you know, the sort of green grassy notes of a green tea to the more sort of floral and fruity notes that one tends to taste when drinking an oolong tea. So red or black teas are fully oxidized teas, hence the sort of dark red, brown colors of the leaves and liquor. There's no kill green step with black teas, and basically you get this kind of Maillard reaction that happens in the leaves when it fully oxidizes. So you know, this is the same Maillard reaction that you hear TV chefs going on about when they're talking about browning meats and searing steaks, though obviously at a much gentler level. And finally, with dark teas or fermented styles of tea, it's all about the sort of piling and resultant fermentation that occurs, which I won't go into too much detail here, but suffice to say, what it does is it turns the tea into this really dark, really thick and earthy kind of style of tea. So with all that being said, what about yellow tea? The defining step, that menghuang, or wrapping of the leaves, after heat has been applied during the fixing stage, that's the key step with yellow teas. Now during this stage, it's said that non-enzymatic oxidation is said to be occurring, where the distinct grassy notes that would have turned this tea into a green tea develop instead into something that's a little more mellow and gentle in flavor. So sure, there are some changes that occurs, to the chemical makeup of the leaves. Like there's also apparently a light kind of Maillard reaction that's going on as well. But I feel it doesn't seem significant enough to warrant and say that it's completely different from green tea. A variation, yes, but not necessarily a completely new category. So this is a huangya, which is, as far as yellow teas go anyway, one of the more well-known and sort of, popular types of yellow teas. So this is a bud-heavy tea with the picking standard being one bud and 1 or 2 leaves. So flavor-wise, it tastes very, very similar to a green tea. At least this particular one does anyway. It has a distinct sort of grassy and slightly nutty, flavor that I've come to sort of associate with a lot of Chinese green teas, though I guess the grassiness is a little bit more muted, a little bit more mellow when compared to other sort of Chinese green teas. Its dry leaves though seem to be a little bit more yellow in appearance, though to be honest, I reckon if I didn't tell you that this was a yellow tea and you just saw these leaves and kind of blind tasted this tea on its own, you'd probably think that this was a green tea of some type. So here's another type of yellow tea, Huoshan Huangxiaocha. It's a traditionally made yellow tea that consists of younger leaves and no buds. So this one's interesting. The tea undergoes a total of 5 rounds of wrapping and roasting, with the whole production process lasting about a month, making it quite a labor-intensive tea to produce. So okay, I have to admit, there's an interesting and unique flavor to this tea. It's kind of a mix of sweet beans, a light roasted note, and slight grassy notes in this tea. So it's quite smooth and it doesn't have that astringency that one kind of associates with a lot of green teas. It also does feel, when you're drinking this, it does feel a little gentler as well. It feels like it's easier on the stomach, and it's not as, kind of green tasting as most green teas. Those sweet bean flavor notes that definitely come to the foreground, with the light sort of grassy notes well into the background. So if there's a tea that might derail my entire argument against yellow tea as being its own kind of tea category, this would be it. It does taste quite different from your typical green teas. However, it's not as different as when you compare, say, green teas to an oolong tea, or when you compare green teas to a black tea. Like, it's not that different. It's not like the difference isn't as big as those, like comparing those categories. It's still different, don't get me wrong, but it seems like it's a few steps different, as opposed to being like a giant leap into a new category of tea. So I kind of see it as being like two ends of like the same spectrum, where you have, I guess, grassiness, that you taste with most green teas on one end, and then maybe like this like kind of bean-like, more mellow, gentler kind of flavor on the other end. And now this here is another interesting specimen of yellow tea. So this is a huang da cha that's made from leaves from older tea trees and pressed into little single-serve biscuit-like shapes. This tea here, it's a little lighter than the previous two teas that I've been drinking. This one, I guess it's kind of sits somewhere in the middle. Like, it's not as grassy as the first, but then it's not as deep roasted and bean-like as the second one. So the interesting thing about this yellow tea though is that it has flavor notes that I associate with and seem very similar to a Tea Guan Yin oolong tea. That is that light kind of floral grassiness that you can get from a Tea Guan Yin that's present in this tea. And I think if I was blind tasting this one, I could see myself like mistaking this tea for like a light oolong instead of a green or yellow tea. Now, I'm not completely sure if all, sort of huang da cha yellow teas would taste like this because I haven't had too much experience with yellow teas in general. But I think a possible reason for why this tea might taste a little bit oolong-like is because the producer of this tea is actually more known for his Tea Guan Yin oolong teas. So I'm not sure if it's because of the tea's terroir, where they were growing leaves in a similar region to when they, where they typically grow oolong tea leaves, or I'm not sure if it's related to the techniques that the producer kind of uses, or maybe even the equipment or production facilities. But I guess, I have to say, I didn't expect a yellow tea to taste like this, to have these kind of oolong-like characteristics as well. So I'll admit though, I'm not super familiar with yellow teas. I haven't met or spent any time with producers that specialize in yellow teas. These are really the only yellow teas that I've tried in any depth. And well, just based on these three teas alone, like, it hasn't really convinced me that yellow tea should be considered like a separate tea category in its own. But hey, who knows? Maybe one day, if I ever get a chance to travel to a plantation and meet a producer that specializes in yellow tea, learn a little bit more about the traditions and history behind it, I might change my mind. I'm completely open to that. So all you tea lovers out there, what do you think? Do I have a point, or am I just some random idiot on YouTube that's talking crap? Are there any yellow tea aficionados out there? If so, is there a yellow tea that you can point me to that you think is clearly different from green tea and is an argument for why yellow tea deserves to be considered a tea type of its own? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.